They wanted our planet. We gave them Australia. They came in warships the size of cities, bristling with weapons that could shear through planetary crusts like hot knives through butter. They came with the arrogance of conquerors who had done this 1,000 times before, with the certainty of predators who had never known fear. They wanted Earth, our cities, our resources, our future. We didn't fight them, not the way they expected. Instead, we handed them a landmass roughly the size of a continent, smiled and said, "Welcome to Australia." And then we sat back and let the planet do the rest. The war, if you could call it that, wasn't fought with railguns or orbital bombardments. It was fought with venom, heat, and the kind of evolutionary nightmare fuel that makes Earth the undisputed champion of cosmic bad ideas. The Vrax came expecting resistance. They found something worse. They found spiders the size of their helmets, snakes that could kill them before their nervous systems even registered pain, and birds, actual flesh and feather birds, that chased down armored scouts like heat-seeking missiles. They found themselves locked in battle with the land itself, against creatures so absurdly lethal that even humans, arguably the most war-hardened species in the galaxy, had learned to just stay out of their way. And the Vrax? Oh, they had no idea what they had walked into. The invasion began as all Vrax invasions did, with the cold efficiency of a machine built to conquer. The Dominion's ships slipped into Earth's orbit, blotting out the sky over every major city. Their message came in a broadcast, pristine and clinical, translated into every known human language with a precision that only an interstellar empire could achieve. Surrender. Your species is obsolete. Your planet is now property of the Vrax Dominion. Resistance is futile. They expected panic. They expected the usual reactions: riots, desperate counterattacks, useless diplomacy. Instead, Earth's response came in the form of a single message from the United Nations Security Council, a reply that historians would later call the most passive-aggressive war declaration in human history. We acknowledge your superior firepower and tactical advantage. As a gesture of peace, we surrender strategic planetary holdings for your immediate occupation. A continent, fully seated. Our forces will not engage. Your new dominion shall begin in Australia. To the Vrax, it made perfect sense. The humans understood their inferiority and sought only to minimize casualties. A strategic handover of land would allow the Dominion to establish planetary control without unnecessary resistance. For the first time in their long and storied history, the Vrax miscalculated. As the Dominion's shock troopers descended in force, they found nothing. No military resistance, no entrenched positions, no strategic defenses. Just open land, red soil, and silence. Their High Commander, Cathalan, observed the barren terrain from the bridge of his command ship, nodding in approval. This was a good starting point. The humans were pragmatic. This will be simple. Within 3 hours, the first casualty reports started coming in. By the end of the first day, 17 entire platoons were lost. Not to combat, but to environmental hazards. Vrax soldiers equipped with state-of-the-art armor, bioregenerative plating, and combat AI assistants were being eaten alive by insects. Tactical reconnaissance units were wiped out by creatures so small they barely registered on scanners, and larger assault groups found themselves running for their lives from territorial wildlife that didn't even consider them a proper meal. Just an inconvenience to remove. By day 3, the first major command post was deemed unsalvageable due to an aggressive encroachment of fauna, which, in human terms, meant the spiders moved in and refused to leave. The Vrax began retreating from certain areas, not because they had been outgunned, but because they were genuinely afraid of the things living there. By week 2, Dominion High Command declared the Australian front compromised due to unstable environmental conditions. By week 3, Australia had won the war, without a single human firing a shot. From Earth's orbital stations, human leadership monitored the whole thing, watching live satellite feeds of elite alien warriors being systematically dismantled by the ecosystem. The laughter started early. Low chuckles from generals, restrained smirks from politicians. By the time a Vrax battalion commander was seen screaming and running from a single magpie, the laughter had spread to the entire planet. At one point, a human technician asked, "Should we, do something?" "No," came the reply from the Supreme Allied Commander, watching an entire alien mechanized unit be driven into the ocean by a rogue emu flock. "This is better." And so humanity did what it does best. We waited, and we watched, and we let Australia do the fighting for us. The Vrax High Command had expected resistance. They had planned for human insurrections, strategic retreats, and last-ditch nuclear desperation. What they had not planned for was silence. Their fleet had descended upon Australia's red soil like a divine hammer, columns of armored warriors marching in perfect formation, drones scouting from the sky, mechanized walkers carving out the first bastions of what would soon be the Dominion's new stronghold. And yet, nothing. No enemy. No human counterattack. Not even a single desperate, ragged band of survivors throwing rocks at their war machines. Cathalan, Supreme Ground Commander of the Dominion's 12th Invasion Fleet, had led campaigns across 6 galaxies. He had shattered planets, broken civilizations, reduced once proud species to footnotes in history. And now he was standing in the middle of an empty war zone, listening to the wind howl through the barren expanse of the Outback, trying to understand why the hell no one was fighting back. It was a trap. It had to be a trap. So he ordered recon patrols, 5-man squads, armed, armored, ready for anything. They did not return. At first, this was merely puzzling, but then the reports started trickling in. Casualties reported in Quadrant 7. No signs of enemy presence. Unit leader unresponsive. Biometrics offline. Squad 3 neutralized. Cause of death unknown. Sending in recovery team. Recovery team neutralized. Immediate assistance required. Silence. Cathalan watched the transmissions in growing disbelief. What in the name of the void was happening down there? These were the finest soldiers the Dominion had ever produced. Warriors bred for war. Their bodies enhanced with cybernetics. Their reflexes sharpened to machine-like perfection. They had torn through entire planetary defenses before breakfast. And yet, something here was picking them off. Not in battle. Not in a glorious clash of arms. No, these squads weren't being defeated. They were disappearing. The first footage recovered from a fallen scout unit's helmet cam only raised more questions. The video feed was shaky, night vision grainy and flickering. The soldier was breathing heavily, plasma rifle raised, sweeping the landscape. Sand, rocks, an unnatural silence. Then, movement. Something small, scuttling. The Vrax warrior turned, just in time for the world to go black. A high-pitched screech, an inhuman gurgling sound, and then the feed cut out. It took their engineers 4 hours to recover what little data was left. When they did, they found the last recorded frame of the soldier's vision. 8 hairy legs and fangs. So many fangs. At first, Cathalan refused to believe it. Spiders? That was insulting. So he sent in more men, more mechs. He deployed flame units, ordered the terrain sterilized, had entire sections of the landscape scorched to ash. It did not help. The creatures came anyway, and the spiders were just the beginning. Reports from other sectors arrived with increasing panic. Shock troopers were dropping without a single shot fired, their bodies swelling and convulsing from unseen poisons. One squad leader barely had time to scream before something long, brown, and fast coiled around his leg and sank needle-like fangs into his throat. The Dominion's medical corps worked frantically. Their advanced bioscrubbers failed to neutralize whatever hellish venom was working its way through their ranks. Nothing in their database could explain it. Biological agent detected. Classification: unknown. Unknown. The Dominion had cataloged thousands of planets, analyzed every conceivable biochemical threat. But this wasn't war. This was the planet itself rejecting them. Things only worsened when a mechanized walker, patrolling the outskirts of their newly constructed base, suddenly vanished from radar. No enemy contact, no explosion, just gone. When a recovery team was sent to investigate, they found the wreckage, or rather, what was left of it. The walker had fallen, collapsed into the Earth itself, because, as it turned out, Australia had sinkholes. The Dominion's forces had walked straight into them. And then there were the birds. At first, the Vrax did not take them seriously, because why would they? Birds were non-threats. Birds were prey species. And then a recon unit was attacked by a single territorial magpie and had to call in backup. Then another, and another. Soon, entire squads were firing plasma rifles wildly into the air, screaming as wave after wave of black and white winged demons descended upon them. Cathalan could no longer deny it. This planet was hostile. Not because of its people, but because of its everything else. The Vrax did not retreat. That was not their way. To retreat was to accept inferiority. To retreat was to admit defeat. And yet, something had to change. The High Command could no longer ignore the casualty reports. The loss of 3 full battalions in a matter of weeks, not to enemy fire, not to orbital bombardment, but to things that shouldn't have posed a threat. It was impossible. And yet, it was happening. They attempted to adapt. They reinforced their armor, increased their patrols, and ordered flamethrowers deployed across every quadrant. Every soldier was now equipped with a personalized anti-venom kit for at least the 12 most aggressive toxins found in this harmless war zone. The effort didn't help. The spiders got bigger. The snakes got faster. The birds, well, the birds had simply become more organized. High Commander Cathalan stood in the war room of the burning husk of their central base, staring at the holomap as the casualty reports piled up. His mandibles clenched tight. His primary heart pounded in fury, while his secondary heart, normally a redundant organ, was now doing the work of keeping him from having a full-scale stroke. "Sir, we've lost control of Sector 8. Sector 8 had been fortified. Mines, gun turrets, drone patrols. What in the void took it? Humans? Negative, sir. Wildlife." A long silence. A single trembling officer dared to speak. "We believe it was the cassowaries, sir." "The what?" Cathalan turned slowly, his 4 crimson eyes glowing in the dim light. He was many things: an apex warrior, a master tactician, an executioner of planetary annihilation. But he was not a fool. He had read the briefings. The cassowary, a flightless bird, nearly 2 meters tall, clawed feet capable of disemboweling a soldier in a single strike, the most aggressive avian documented in the entire Dominion's xenobiological database. Are you telling me a group of flightless birds took out a fully armed Vrax defensive line? Yes, sir. How many of them were there? 2, sir. Silence. Then Cathalan flipped the war table over with a roar. 2 birds. 2. It wasn't just the environment. It wasn't just the wildlife. It was the complete and utter lack of logic. Cathalan was losing his mind. And then came the final insult. The humans had noticed. Not only were they watching, but they were interfering. At first, it was subtle. A broken radio transmission here, a disrupted supply line there. But now they were playing games. A distress signal lured an entire Vrax mechanized division into what should have been an empty canyon. The human radio frequency had crackled, filled with static and whispers, and then a single phrase, spoken in mock seriousness. "Welcome to the Thunderdome. Then the fires started. Bushfires driven by unrelenting winds swept through the canyon, cutting off all escape routes. The armored walkers designed for urban combat had no countermeasures for a force of nature that didn't give a damn about energy shields or quantum plating. And the humans, they just watched. Cathalan knew they were there, somewhere, laughing, drinking that revolting ethanol-based beverage they called beer. The Dominion wasn't just losing the war, they were becoming a joke. The news spread across the fleet, the whispers, the murmurs, that the Vrax, the unbeatable, the conquerors of galaxies, were being humiliated by a single, insignificant death world. Cathalan knew what came next. The Annihilator contingency. It was standard protocol. When a planet resisted past the threshold of acceptable losses, when a species refused to submit, the Dominion took the final option. Total planetary bombardment. A cleansing of the world, reducing all life to dust. But just as the preparations began, just as the orbital fleet readied its weapons, something went wrong. The human hackers struck first. Somehow, they had infiltrated the Vrax command network. It shouldn't have been possible. The Dominion's quantum encrypted security systems were the most advanced in the galaxy. But humans didn't fight wars with just brute force. They fought with dirty tricks. The moment the fleet locked onto Earth's surface, the Dominion's targeting systems crashed. Screens filled with nonsense data. Coordinates scrambled. The entire AI network fried itself trying to process the absolute chaotic mess of false signals, sensor overloads, and... Wait, was that a picture of a dog wearing sunglasses? And underneath it, in broken Vrax script, "You mad, bro?" The fleet panicked. Firing solutions failed. The Dominion's greatest weaponry turned useless. And then, the final insult. The humans reversed the targeting systems. And the Vrax? The Vrax fired on themselves. The orbital strike hit their own ground forces. Thousands of their own warriors obliterated in a single catastrophic misfire. Cathalan stared at the burning wreckage, the shattered remnants of his once great invasion force, the skies thick with smoke and debris, and somewhere in the distance he swore he could hear human laughter. Cathalan had never known true despair until now. He had seen armies break, had burned civilizations to cinders, had crushed species beneath the might of the Dominion. He had never lost, and yet, here he stood, amidst the smoking ruins of his own army, watching the last remnants of his invasion force stumble through the ash, their armor blackened, their eyes wide with something he refused to acknowledge as fear. This was not how the Vrax fought wars. This was not how the Dominion claimed its conquests. And yet, the reality remained. They had been outmaneuvered, outlasted, outwitted. Not by superior firepower, not by advanced strategy, by a planet that did not care if they were apex predators, by a species that did not fight fair, by wildlife that seemed personally invested in their suffering. The final reports were devastating. Casualty rate, 98%. Operational capacity, collapsed. Morale, non-existent. Of the original 300,000 Vrax warriors deployed, fewer than 6,000 remained combat capable. The fleet was in chaos. Their AI systems were still corrupted, their command networks compromised, their own weapons turned against them. There was only one option left. Cathalan gritted his mandibles, humiliation burning in his veins. Order the retreat. There was silence. The surviving officers, those still lucid enough to process what was happening, stared at him in horror. The Vrax Dominion had never retreated. And yet, here they were, running. The command was relayed, the Dominion's war fleet shifting course, engines igniting as they prepared to flee Earth's atmosphere. And then, just as the first ships broke through the clouds, a new transmission crackled to life on every single Vrax comm channel. The voice was human, calm, casual, smug. "Oi, boys. Where you going? We were just getting started. Cathalan's mandibles clenched so tight they cracked. The humans had hijacked their communication system again. A video feed appeared. On the screen, a group of humans, lounging in what appeared to be a makeshift command center, beer bottles clinking as they watched the fleeing Vrax on their own monitors. One of them, a grizzled old officer with a scar across his cheek, raised a bottle in a mock toast. "Cheers for the visit, fellas. You know, you really should have done your homework." Beside him, a younger soldier was counting something on his fingers. "So what was it, boys?" "The snakes, the spiders, the drop bears. Oh, wait, was it the birds? Tell me it was the birds. Please tell me you lost an entire battalion to a bunch of magpies." Another round of raucous laughter. Cathalan could feel his blood pressure rising. "You think this is funny?" he snarled, slamming a fist onto his war table. The old officer took a sip of his drink. "Mate, this is the funniest damn thing I've ever seen." The Vrax fleet broke atmosphere, escaping into the cold void of space, their once proud warships limping back toward Dominion territory. And yet, even as they fled, the humans had the last word. As the Vrax cruisers reached safe distance, a final transmission echoed through their comms. No words, just music. Something ancient, something that shouldn't have held power over a species of hardened warriors. And yet, as the opening chords of AC/DC's Highway to Hell blared through their ships, Cathalan closed his eyes in silent, absolute fury. He could never return to the Dominion. His name would be cursed for generations. The humans had won, not just the war, but the story. And in the end, that was what truly mattered. The official report filed to the Vrax High Command was 4 words long. Earth is a death world. Nothing more. No detailed battle logs, no strategic recommendations, no analysis of enemy strengths and weaknesses, because none of it mattered. The Dominion had spent centuries refining its military doctrine, perfecting its war machine to crush, dominate, and assimilate. But Earth? Earth was not a conquerable world. Earth was not a world that submitted. Earth was a mistake. Cathalan's name would be spoken in hushed tones for generations. A cautionary tale, the answer to the whispered question, what happened to the unbreakable fleet? The Dominion could not afford to acknowledge the truth of what had happened here. And so, they erased it. Every record of the invasion purged. Every surviving officer sworn to silence under penalty of total genetic annihilation. The official stance of the Vrax Dominion was simple. We never invaded Earth. It was easier that way. Safer. Because if the truth got out, if the rest of the galaxy learned what had happened, then every species that had ever feared the Dominion would be asking the same question. If the mighty Vrax couldn't conquer Earth, what chance do we have? It was a question best left unanswered. And so Earth was placed under permanent quarantine. Not because it was too dangerous to attack, but because the mere thought of trying was too humiliating to consider. Meanwhile, on Earth, things went back to normal. The politicians scrambled to cover up the entire fiasco, pretending that the whole thing had been a minor skirmish, a brief misunderstanding, a diplomatic incident now fully resolved. The Australians, of course, weren't buying it. One moment, there were alien warships blackening the sky. The next, they were leaving in disgrace, and nobody was supposed to ask why. Bullshit. The memes were immediate. Tourist shirts appeared within days, plastered with slogans like, "I survived the alien invasion and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." Earth, now officially Vrax free. Come for the beaches, stay because the drop bears got your transport shuttle. One enterprising brewery even rebranded its entire product line. Cassowary Lager. So strong even aliens fear it. Meanwhile, governments around the world quietly reviewed their defense policies. Because now they knew. They knew that the Dominion was out there. That other galactic empires existed. That Earth had, through sheer insanity and ecological hostility, fought off an interstellar invasion. Which raised the most dangerous question of all. What happens next? Because one day, another species would come knocking. Maybe they wouldn't be as arrogant as the Vrax. Maybe they'd be worse. And when that day came, Earth would not be caught unprepared. The first initiative was passed in secret, a global military project, uniting resources in ways that would have been unthinkable before the invasion. The first official spacefaring fleet was greenlit. Within a decade, Earth's first warships would take flight, because the lesson of the Vrax War was not lost on humanity. The next time aliens arrived, it would not be as invaders. It would be as equals, or not at all. But for now, the world exhaled, and in the Australian Outback, where the war had truly been fought, life continued as it always had. The sun blazed down upon the vast red earth. The wind whispered through the brush, and the creatures of the land, both the mundane and the monstrous, continued their ancient, indifferent existence. And somewhere, perched high in the trees, a single drop bear licked alien blood from its claws and waited patiently for the next fools to step foot on its land. And that, my friends, is another testament to humanity's unrivaled ingenuity. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button. It fuels the algorithm and lets me know you want more. Drop a comment below with your favorite moment. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join us for the next story. See you in the next one. Stay awesome, stay defiant, and as always, humanity rules.